This series contains adult language and descriptions of graphic violence. Listener discretion is advised. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. And welcome to part 2 of, I don't know what this one's going to be titled yet, but the murder of Adrianne Jones. And you are listening to Death by Southwest, the podcast where each week I share a different grisly murder story from the American Southwest while my co-host and sister tries to piece together the clues and unravel the mystery behind each of these heinous crimes. I'm your host, Margot.
And I'm Jenna.
I just did that all from memory. I feel really proud of myself for that.
Yay.
It is 3 days before Christmas. And I don't know if this will come out Christmas week or we might save it because murder and Christmas feels like maybe not the best.
Tell yourself that from a year ago when we started the podcast right around Christmas season. And I bet we didn't take off Christmas week.
We did not. I don't think we
had
did.
It was like our second or third episode.
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, maybe I will put this out. We'll see.
Also, it just means maybe you want a week off.
Yeah, I do. We need to get ahead. I need to get ahead with the writing. Well, I mean, I guess we should just jump right in. I was going to say we could chit chat for a few minutes, get warmed up, but we know that people don't really like that. So just to get people back in the mindset of this, we are talking about the murder of Adrianne Jones, who was a high school student. She went to school with David Graham, who was dating Diane Zamora, who went to a different high school than Adrianne and David.
And what city are we in or town?
We are in
Greeley.
Yes.
Greeley what?
No, we are not.
Shit. When was Greeley? Last one.
Janelle. Yeah.
Oh,
we're in Mansfield, Texas.
That's right.
Mansfield, Texas. So basically where we left off is that Adrianne's body has been found and
by a farmer.
And police have really no suspects. There's not a lot of physical evidence, but they, speak to family and friends, and then they speak to a young man named Brian McMillan, who was a local teenager that was supposedly grappling with severe depression, and also multiple different people said that he was obsessed with Adrianne. And he went in we kind of talked about this last time, that he was brought in for questioning. He initially said he didn't know her. Then he admitted he did. And police kind of put together this picture in their mind of this isolated, depressed boy. He can't get the attention of this popular girl from school. And so he schemes to meet her late at night, and then things get out of control. And the night that Adrianne went missing, Brian was drinking heavily for the first time in 6 months, he told police. So he didn't remember where he was or what he was doing that night. So they let him go home, but they still were focused on him.
Yeah, they didn't have enough to arrest or charge him.
Right.
Yeah.
But exactly where we ended last time is that on the early hours of December 15th, 1995, so about 2 weeks after Adrianne went missing and was killed, police officers armed with a search warrant arrived at Brian's residence. They arrested him for murder. They seized his pickup truck. This made headlines everywhere, obviously. And a lot of Brian's friends, he didn't have many friends, but the few friends he did have were quick to defend him. They kept telling the police, this couldn't be him. He's a mild-mannered, he's confused and depressed, but he would never resort to violence.
Well, and when you said depressed, I mean, the obsessed with her part, sure, that's a thought or
that's a
thing.
red flag, yeah.
But the depressed part, I was thinking, it takes a lot of energy, I imagine, to murder someone. And in general, depressed people don't have motivation.
Right.
They're just, lethargic.
Right.
But when you said he was drinking,
that could change things.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
But his friends are saying pretty much what you're saying. He was depressed. He was kind of sad. He wasn't going to violently murder somebody. And Brian's father insisted that on the night of the murder, Brian did go out, but he came back home and stayed home the rest of the night. So he spent Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve in jail. And a senior prosecutor in the district attorney's office arranged for him to undergo a polygraph test. And the prosecutor said not only did he pass the test, but he passed it exceptionally well.
Which I think we know, and maybe it varies state by state, but that polygraphs at this point, they can help and or hurt one's case. And also they can be kind of, or not kind of, admissible. Like they're not
100% reliable.
Sure.
Like you couldn't convict somebody
based on a polygraph.
Yeah, alone. Like only
Yep.
that's all that you have is a polygraph. Like that, it's not. I believe, because I know that there are ways to pass a polygraph.
Well, sure, because it tests your heart rate and your breathing rate and
Right.
your whatever else rate. But yeah, I just believe that it can be a piece of something that
can add to
adds to a case.
It can either add to proving someone's innocent or add
Yep.
to proving someone's guilty. In this case, it added to proving that Brian was innocent. Combined with his father saying that he was home that night and no physical evidence, they let Brian go.
He had gone out, but then he came back home.
According to his father.
Right.
So, but that was enough. Like no physical evidence, and he passed exceptionally well.
And an alibi.
He was let go, and this sparked even more gossip. If you remember last episode, I was saying that gossip, the rumor mill was going strong. At this point, police are now going back to what Adrianne's brother had said, that he thought he saw a pickup truck driving slowly past the house and then driving down the street. He never saw it in the driveway. He couldn't say what it was exactly. It was very I think I saw this.
And let's say it was a pickup truck. Mm-hmm. He couldn't give any more detail. Like what the make, model, color, whatever.
Nope.
Does Brian drive a pickup?
I believe no.
Okay.
And so that's a great question. That's a really good question. I would imagine if Brian did drive a pickup, we'd know.
You would have found that.
And he would not have been released. Yeah. But police started conducting computer searches to locate any students who owned any type of pickup truck.
Any students that go to whose school?
Adrianne's school.
Okay.
Which is the same school as David.
Right. But what about that other school where...
Well, Diane goes to a different school, but it's about 18, 20 miles away. And
okay, so at least that's a place to start. Like,
right. Like they have no
school.
There's no... Diane and Adrianne, as far as police know, don't know each other.
Right.
Also, this seemed kind of like a wild goose chase because the pickup truck wasn't in the driveway. Like, what's to say it wasn't just a pickup truck driving down the road?
Yeah.
But
I guess when you don't have a lot of leads,
that's true.
You take any lead.
That's true.
I mean, I don't know if that's true. That's just my
no. I think that
goes.
is true. You have to you're grasping at straws.
You gotta start somewhere,
right? So I found something interesting in an article that said nobody speculated that Adrianne may have mentioned Brian was on the other line when she was talking to her boyfriend, said that to her boyfriend to conceal who was actually on the other line.
Oh, because she doesn't like Brian or didn't.
Well, Brian was, she didn't like Brian. Brian
she
was stalking
felt
her.
Weird about Brian. Yeah.
And
so maybe she just threw that name out there
to make sure that her boyfriend didn't, because remember, she slept with David.
Right. Maybe it was David or another guy she had a crush on or another person.
We don't know, but she told her mom it was David.
Right.
She told her boyfriend it was Brian.
Oh, that makes me think it's David. But go on.
So that was kind of a theory that maybe she said that to Tracy. She said it was Brian to Tracy to hide the fact that she was talking to David or someone else. But David's what she told her mom. And then it wasn't until months later where police are still spinning in circles. Brian, Tracy, David. These are the people she talked to. Yeah.
What about phone records?
Wow.
You're going to have to cut this. What year is this?
1995.
I mean, I think there's some sort of phone record, right? A home phone. I don't know, but that would be, coming from 2023 or 2000s.
Well, that would be exactly where you would start. Who was on call waiting.
Yeah. Maybe they couldn't
I
in
don't know.
95.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a great lookup list.
I know. I don't have my notebook, and we don't do those lookup lists really.
I know, but I'd like to do
Yeah,
them.
I'd like to know just for myself.
Yeah.
Anyways. Anywho.
So it was months later when police are still kind of looking at Brian, at Tracy, at David. So there's 3 people she talked to that night. That Tina Dollar, which I love that name, the manager at Golden Fried Chicken where Adrianne worked, went to police and said, I do remember Adrianne once taking a picture out of her wallet and showing me that this boy that she was interested in liked. And Tina said, she pulled the picture out and showed me, and Adrianne said his name is David.
She pulled out the picture of a boy she liked.
Adrianne, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and showed it to her manager when she was alive, obviously.
Sure. Well, this could take a turn into a different kind of realm, but yes, I hear you.
Police were, welcoming any information, but this didn't really do much for them.
Well, and when you said they were looking into Tracy and David and Brian, the 3 people she was on the phone with that night.
Well, she wasn't
allegedly. 3
allegedly.
people she talked to or whatever.
Supposedly.
Allegedly, right?
But she talked to Tracy for sure, and then either David or Brian.
Right.
We don't know.
Or neither.
Or neither. That's true. So this picture that Tina Dollar said she saw and that Adrianne said it's David, okay. Didn't do anything for police. There was nothing there.
Yeah.
So in the summer of 1996, after interviewing nearly 300 people.
Like high school kids, probably some with pickup trucks.
Sure. Yeah. Detectives decided to put this case on what they called slow down mode. And Bill and Linda Jones, Adrianne's parents, were just more and more distraught and desperate for answers.
What is slow? I mean, I can only assume slow down mode means this is no longer acute. It's not our tippy top story that we're investigating.
No longer a
investigation.
Right. Yeah.
Because that's kind of interesting because I get it's been however many months or a year.
About a year. No.
And they haven't gotten many leads or gotten far, but the person,
it's been about 6 months actually.
The person's still dead. The thing still happened.
And I get nobody has been caught.
I get they have additional things to investigate, people to investigate, but still, like,
this murder is out there.
It's like if we can't find something within this amount of time, we put it on slowdown mode.
Which seems crazy because it wasn't that big of a town. And so to know that somebody murdered a teenage girl and was still out there, maybe not. Maybe they took off and went somewhere else. But yeah. And the summer of 1996, so she was murdered December 1995. So January.
6 months.
6 months. It's not that much time.
Also, did they look at in a smaller town or smaller city? I wonder if they looked at people who had
owned
registered.
I'm sure they did.
Bullets can go to a lot of guns, but just even gun owners. Gun owners. Yeah,
I'm sure they did.
Yeah. I mean, I'm acting like I'm coming up with the innovative ideas.
No, but those are really like,
I'm certain.
You know what's interesting? I probably won't cut this actually, but you know what's interesting is that it's good to hear those questions because sometimes now when I'm researching, I hear your questions in my head and I specifically look for things because I'm so focused on just getting the details of the story that are available that I'm not thinking like, well, why did they talk to everybody who owned a gun in town or that type of gun? Or, why didn't they look at phone records? Were phone records available? Like those are very legitimate questions that quite frankly don't go through my head when I'm researching and writing these. So I need to maybe pay more attention, but
I'll ask them. So
I like those questions. I need to try and remember those so we can look them up. So the case is on slowdown mode. Bill and Linda are just in despair, wanting answers. Bill said that he had to restrain himself from interrogating every teenager that he saw in town.
I bet.
At night, every single night, Linda would get into her car and drive to the site where Adrianne was found, hoping that the killer might be lurking around. Also, around this time, it was happier news for David and Diane because they learned within days of each other that they had both been accepted to their military academies that they applied to. And so they were going to only have to be communicating via email phone when they could.
Did they use, I guess, 96?
95, 90, oh yeah, 96, 97. There was email. Yeah. So at first they did a great job of speaking every day through email. Both of them felt that they maintained their closeness even though their physical distance was far apart. But they both went through whatever that initial training is called in the beginning, like 6 weeks, and it was grueling. It was very, very hard. And for some reason, Diane started to get suspicious that David maybe wasn't being faithful to her. She started feeling distrustful towards him. She still stayed kind of steadfast in that they're going to get married in 5 years, that they're still going to stay together. There was just something inside of her that was like...
Intuition.
Yeah. Or just being apart for that long.
Well, I was going to say, this is like not uncommon even in today's day and age where there's all kinds of ways to stay in touch.
Sure.
It's common. I believe it's pretty common to start off good and strong in a distance relationship, and then
you talk less, you get busier, you make friends.
Especially if you're in a military academy.
Yeah, absolutely. So according to Diane's peers at her military academy, she was experiencing intense emotional moments. She would break out into crying when David didn't respond to her emails. She expressed to her peers suspicions that David was cheating. She also expressed these suspicions to David. She thought that he might be unfaithful with a female cadet at the Air Force Academy where he was.
I'm guessing he denied that?
He did. So this is the first time that they had ever really been apart, and the first time that Diane had ever experienced this kind of like jealousy, because they were so obsessed with each other when they were in the same place. They weren't jealous. They were always together. So this is the kind of her first experience with that.
Well, also think about this. Where did you say you named the
Air Force Academy?
I mean, I don't know where that is, but it's got to be
in Colorado Springs.
It's big, right?
It's
like,
big.
come on.
Yeah.
Okay. So they came from a smaller town. I kind of first thought like big fish, small pond. Now there's smaller fish in big ponds, not together physically.
Right.
And living presumably independent, independent from their families for the first time ever. So many new stressors. So just new life people. Is totally different.
Totally different. I mean, going to college is totally different. I can't imagine going to a military academy where you're going to school and you're also being like physically tested in so many ways. And there's much more stringent rules. You're not going to keg parties at the Air Force Academy.
Which I'm not sure which is better or worse for a long distance relationship.
That's
I just
true.
think both are challenging.
So Diane decided she was going to make David jealous as well. She was like, I hate feeling jealousy, so I'm going to make David jealous. So she stopped sending emails to him for several days. She told him somehow, I don't know how, but said her computer had malfunctioned. Eventually, she sent David an email telling him that Jay, her squad leader, had kissed her.
Don't miss what happens next in today's episode. We'll be right back after a short message from our sponsors.
And Jay was a very good-looking squad leader from suburban Chicago.
Was that true to what you know? Or was this her putting it on to make him jelly?
I don't know.
Yeah, okay. Either which way.
I do know. So
okay, but not right now. You don't. Right. I don't know.
You don't know. I don't know, so you don't know right now. Mm-hmm. That's right. So upon learning about Diane's involvement with Jay, David tried to reach out to naval authorities to report Jay's alleged sexual harassment, because David is seeing it as like, this is her superior. That can't happen.
There's a power dynamic, yeah.
And Diane made it sound like Jay kissed her, like she wasn't into it.
Right, because she didn't also want to be the one. So whether it's true or not, she's maybe didn't think that through, and she just kind of put it on this
Jay.
person.
She wants to blame him. She wants to be blameless.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. And David believed her, whether it's true or not. He believed her. He was upset. He tried to contact the naval authorities, and then he started sending aggressive emails to Jay, warning Jay, do not associate with Diane anymore, or you're going to be sorry.
How did he get Jay's email? I know you don't know that, or it doesn't matter
It's gotta be
ultimately.
a military directory,
But
probably.
so Jay was a real person.
Yes.
That she had probably talked about when they first got to their...
Is her squad leader. It was her squad leader. So she was definitely in constant contact with Jay.
In a way, I hope, this sounds weird, but I hope Jay and her did kiss consensually, I guess. Because otherwise, if she just made that up and then...
that sucks for Jay.
Oh, yeah. That could affect
ruin his life.
Whole career outlook.
Absolutely.
Wow.
So one of David's friends mentioned that David would regularly handwrite letters to Diane, pleading her not to cheat on him. Please don't betray me. He would include lines in his letters such as, quote, remember the ties that unite us. Jay was actually interested in Diane. He was kind of captivated by her, but he respected that she had a boyfriend, even though he's getting these threatening emails from her boyfriend. And he's like, I'm not doing anything. Jay and Diane were friends, and he was her squad leader.
All the things thus far that I know are true besides the kiss.
Yep.
Okay.
So at one point in that summer, he asked Diane if David had ever cheated on her. And her answer would change how Jay felt about Diane instantly. So she said yes. And Jay said, what did you do about it? And she said, I asked David to kill the other girl. Jay was sitting there.
The girl that David cheated with.
Yeah. Jay was sitting there stunned, like not sure whether to believe her or not. And Diane went on and said, I watched him kill the girl that he cheated with, Adrianne.
What?
She said, I didn't participate, but I told him to do it, and then I watched him do it. And
what?
Jay was like, exactly that.
Like, are you...
Jay was like, what?
Are you being...
facetious? Are you
like
joking?
Sarcastic?
Right. It's not funny, but
right. But
how do you just come out and say that? So Jay didn't know what to think. He was like, is this true? Is this not? Realistically, Jay should have told somebody, because there's a strict, stringent honor code referred to as the Brigade of Midshipmen Honor Concept. It mandates that any midshipman, so this must be the Navy, must promptly report any fellow midshipman who engages in lying, cheating, or breaking the law. Jay decided not to disclose this information.
Essentially, he's a mandatory reporter, and
Yes.
he did not report.
Exactly. He said, I didn't want to believe it. I thought maybe she was just trying to get attention. So even though Jay kept his mouth shut, Diane did not. By late August, Diane had told the story again, this time with her two roommates, Mandy Gotch and Jennifer McKerney.
So, like, is she pissed at her boyfriend? And I mean, I'm just...
Maybe.
My thoughts are like, is she really thinking he's cheating on her and is just angry?
That would be a real shitty thing to do.
Also, I'm still wondering if this is true that he did it.
Right.
Either way, I guess it's shitty. It's more shitty if he didn't do it.
For her, yes. It's more shitty of her if he didn't do it.
Right, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
If she said do it, whether she was being serious in the moment or not, and he did do it and she watched, then I'd say whatever. Right. I mean, whatever.
So Adrianne told her roommates this during a late night conversation, and it came up kind of like this. They were talking about Diane and David's relationship, and one of the roommates were like, you guys seem so close. You seem so strong. I know you're worried, but like, it seems like you guys would do anything for each other. And Diane said, yes, we would. And the roommate said, even kill for one another. And she was kind of joking. And Diane paused and then said, well, we have killed for each other. And then told the story about how David killed Adrianne because she asked him to.
Well, I'd change her statement a bit that David would kill for her.
Yeah, that's true. That's
okay. Also, it doesn't matter.
That's an important distinction. But so the roommates, again, like Jay, were like, what the fuck? This cannot be real. This 18-year-old girl, her boyfriend cheated on her, and she told him, no, this can't be true. But the next day, they were still feeling unsettled about this. So they went to the Navy chaplain. They went to the Navy chaplain and disclosed the conversation that they had had with Diane the night before.
Yeah, that's a lot to carry, especially if you know it's true, and also especially if you're uncertain and you're like, what is happening?
Of course. Also, do I want to stay in a room with a girl who murdered
and
someone?
also, I imagine to some extent they're mandatory reporters as well. It doesn't matter. They did the thing that makes sense.
So the chaplain reached out to the Navy attorney at the academy and asked him to start making inquiries at police departments across.
You just leave that in, and we just don't comment on it. Across. It's like La Croix.
Across the Dallas-Fort Worth region to ask if there were any unresolved cases involving the murder of a teenage girl. On August 29th, the Navy attorney contacted the Grand Prairie Police Department. Remember, that's the police department right next to Mansfield, where Adrianne's body was found. So the Navy attorney contacted Grand Prairie Police Department, and the next morning, detectives boarded a flight headed to Annapolis. So they pulled Diane. Once detectives arrived in Annapolis, they went to the Naval Academy. They pulled Diane out of the first pep rally of the season for the Navy's football team. Diane was escorted down a long hallway and led to a room where there were several detectives and a Navy official. She didn't confess to anything. Her only acknowledgement was that during that plebe summer, which plebe is the word I guess they call like the newest,
The most recent?
the newest like people in the Navy. I don't
Okay. Yeah,
like a plebe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So during that plebe summer is what they call it. She was feeling insecure, and she told the police and the detectives that she had made up a fascinating story about a murder to appear more strong or resilient to her peers.
To get attention,
Yeah,
like
to get
Jay
attention.
initially had reflected on or pondered.
And police remained unconvinced. They didn't believe this story. Like, you're going to talk about that you murdered somebody so that you come across as strong.
That your boyfriend.
Right. But they had no evidence.
Yeah.
They had no evidence. They didn't believe her, but they had no evidence. So they had kind of limited options. So the Navy authorities told Diane that she was temporarily suspended. They sent her back home until this whole situation was resolved. They gave her an airplane ticket from Baltimore to Atlanta and then onward to Dallas.
Oh, so she didn't get kicked out of school, but like
she was suspended. She had to leave. Yeah. And so she went from Baltimore to Atlanta. But when she got in Atlanta, she changed her ticket and boarded a flight to Colorado Springs to visit David at the Air Force Academy.
Which still doesn't tell me anything except for she wanted to see her boyfriend.
Right. Well, and nobody
knows. That's not a good thing to do when you've been suspended because of this. Right. Like, go straight home.
But nobody really knew. No one knows what they talked about, what they did. Like, she went there and then she did eventually go home.
I wonder how long it took the police or whoever the people
to know. That's a good question.
Because I imagine if they said, you're suspended and we want you home to safety, to protect the people here and whatever else.
But do you think they would check up on like that she actually made it home?
I think they should if they think she's a possible suspect.
You're right. They should.
I don't know if they did. Yeah.
And I can't imagine that she stayed in Colorado Springs for that long with David. He's at school. He's in his military academy. What's she doing? She's sleeping in his like bunk.
In this day and age, though, and maybe not because she wasn't yet convicted or indicted or anything, but like in this day and age, wouldn't there be like a flag? Like people can be flagged.
Yeah, you can flag
through the flights, the airport, the TSA.
You would think, and they'd have like an escort waiting at Dallas Fort Worth.
Okay,
for her.
But maybe not because it was just more like, let's get her out of here.
Yeah,
we don't have any evidence. We don't know if this is true.
Right. So after Diane had left Colorado Springs, but not too long after detectives had questioned her in Annapolis, they showed up in Colorado Springs. And they to talk to David.
Right, presumably not, or I'm guessing not necessarily because they knew she went there. They were talking to the next person.
Right.
Yeah.
So David was, to the detectives, he was in disbelief. He couldn't believe this like ridiculous story that Diane had made up. However, the investigators told David that they located his friend in Burleson. His friend, who David and Diane walked up to his bedroom window that night, tapped on the window and asked to be let inside covered in bloody clothes. And so they found that friend. They talked to that friend.
Is that true, or did they just say that?
That's true.
Okay.
They did. And there were Air Force officers in the room during this questioning of David, and they continued to implore him to tell the truth, that it was your responsibility. If you ever want to be a member of the Air Force, you have to tell the truth.
And if you tell the truth and the truth is you murdered someone, good luck being in the Air Force, buddy.
Right. They did not
yeah,
say
of
that.
course. I mean, of course. I'm
Right.
just speaking.
They weren't like, tell the truth and then you're kicked out and see you in jail.
Also, if David had a brain, I'm sorry, but if David, come on.
Right.
You can't do
Well, he can't possibly think he's going to.
You can't admit to murdering, if he did, murdering someone.
And then still be an Air Force officer.
I mean, you're going to prison either way.
And eventually David did relent.
Oh.
He didn't say anything.
Oh.
But he sat down in front of a word processor and composed a confession spanning 4.5 pages. Part of this was later published in the Dallas morning newspaper. One forensic psychologist read it in the Dallas Morning News and said his confession is similar to a Danielle Steele novel.
Oh.
Which is, I don't know if that's actually funny, but it's interesting.
Well, to me, it's Danielle Steele. The first thing that hits my mind is like a romance novel. Yeah. So like it's kind of, maybe it was in a way like romanticized because there's love and love, quote unquote, love, lust, killing for love.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So David wrote in his confession letter that a month after he slept with Adrianne on that one night after the cross-country meet, he was tormented by guilt and shame. He said his, quote, perfect and pure relationship with Diane had been defiled by the one girl who had stolen from us our purity.
Oh, wow. You're really putting it on the person that allegedly you murdered at this point. Wow. What about you? You just like...
You get off scot-free? Like, come on.
Ugh.
He felt so guilty that he eventually told Diane. And for at least, and this is a quote from David, for at least an hour, she screamed sobs that I wouldn't have thought were possible to come from a human. It wasn't just jealousy. For Diane, she had been betrayed, deceived, and forgotten. He said that Diane then gave him an ultimatum. Kill Adrianne or we're done.
Wow, he's really into blaming the women in his life.
That's a really good observation. He sure is. He blamed Adrianne and now he's blaming Diane. Yeah, you're right.
And I'm not saying Diane had no part in the urging or unsing him towards it.
Sure.
And also, and I get they're teenagers and all that, but still.
They're 19 now.
It doesn't freaking matter. Take some, maybe he does, so I'll shut up.
Well, he said, quote, I didn't have any harsh feelings for Adrianne, but no one could stand between me and Diane. So in his confession, he said that on the night of December 3rd, and I pause because some things say December 4th, which just blows my mind that actual newspapers and news reports, some of them say one date and some of them say the other.
They probably do research as you do, and I get it was more timely at the time.
Right.
But also, it's like it's not, but like in some ways a game of telephone of like.
Yeah, that's true. You get it from this
beginning
detective,
the first week of December.
Right, that's true. Yeah. So the
doesn't
first
really matter to our listeners.
No, it doesn't. No. So the first week of December, I like that. That's what I should probably start doing. Yeah. David said that he contacted Adrianne and expressed a desire to meet up with her. So he got in Diane's parents' car, a Mazda Protege, and went to go pick Adrianne up. He said that night, let me come pick you up. I want to talk. Diane was in the car in the hatchback, hiding behind the back seat. He went and picked up Adrianne from her house, and they traveled to an isolated country road where Adrianne kind of reclined the passenger seat a little bit because she thought we're gonna fool around again.
Yeah.
And
Oh, this is all awful and sad, but she obviously had a thing
She liked
to some
David.
extent for
Yeah.
David, and she probably like dolled up. And,
Yeah, she thought that this is what was going to happen. And David kind of leaned over to embrace her. And right as he did that, Diane popped up from the back of the car and hit Adrianne in the head with a dumbbell. Adrianne, however, did not die. And this is a direct quote from David's confession letter. I realized too late that all those quick, painless snaps seen in movies were just your usual Hollywood stunts. Adrianne somehow crawled through the window after she was hit, and to our horror, started to run off. I was panicking and just grabbed the Makarov 9mm to follow her. To our relief at the time, she was too injured from the wounds to her head to go very far. She ran into a nearby field and collapsed. And in that short instant, I knew I couldn't leave the key witness to our crime alive. I just pointed and shot. I fired again, and then I ran to the car, and Diane and I drove off. The first things out of our mouths were, I love you. And then I realized that Diane's thirst for revenge had faltered because she said, we shouldn't have done that, David.
Jeez.
When this precious relationship that we had was damaged by my thoughtless actions, the only thing that could satisfy her womanly vengeance was the life of the one that had, for an instant, taken her place. I mean, he's a very flowery writer. Like, that's a quite elaborate, it's not like I shot her. She died,
Diane Steele, maybe. And not that I think Diane Steele's but I don't know if I've ever actually read her. She's not the most poetic author, but
kind of elaborate.
He's a good writer.
He's very, very good writer.
Wow.
So Diane had a slightly different confession because eventually they went to Diane, and so she gave her confession. And she said that when David stopped the car, presumably in Adrian's mind to kind of hook up with Adrianne, Diane came out from the hatchback and asked Adrianne, said, did you have sex with David? And Adrianne said that she did, but she didn't enjoy it because she felt guilty. And Diane then became very angry, and she got into a struggle with Adrianne and hit Adrianne in the head with the weight because she was trying to protect herself in this struggle.
All of that, it's like semantics.
So it is semantics because then her statement otherwise matched David's, that Adrianne runs away from the car, he shoots her, they drive off, and both of them said that then they cleaned the car that had blood in it. Diane said that David was vomiting while they were trying to clean the car.
I bet.
And then Diane went home, and in her calendar that day, she wrote Adrianne, 1:38 a.m.
1:38 a.m.
Yeah.
Creepy.
Yep. So both of them were obviously arrested. Authorities searched both of their homes and found the handgun and several dumbbells in the attic of David's home. While they were in holding, I just thought this was an interesting tidbit. Every day, officers would watch Diane doing push-ups and sit-ups relentlessly in her cell. She asked for history and government textbooks so she can continue her studies. And people obviously around Mansfield people around Mansfield were shocked. How could this happen? Why would this happen? People knew of David and knew of, this was a small town. They knew of these kids. They were star athletes and worked at local restaurants. After the fact, a lot of teenagers, a lot of their friends and classmates came forward and said, like, I did think something was off about David. I did think maybe something was going on, but they didn't want to be accused of like narking on their friend, which is I haven't heard that word in so long, but it reminds me of high school. Like, don't be a narc.
Also, maybe they didn't want to be perceived as, I kind of knew something was going on, but I kept quiet. Right. Like, they don't want to narc, and they don't want to be affiliated as in I kept quiet.
Right. So after the initial kind of national attention that was given to this case due to Diane and David being arrested, Anna Barrett, a journalist from the Mansfield News Mirror, went on kind of a journey to uncover some positive things about the high school. She wanted to uplift the community's spirits. She was like, let's find out some good things that are going on. But she said, there's a noticeable shift in this town, and you can sense it. And she had a lot of trouble finding any positive things because there was a noticeable shift. Within a month of Diane and David being arrested, a junior at Mansfield High was shot in the face with a shotgun. A girl who had been on the cross-country team with them hung herself. And Bill and Linda Jones at this point are dodging reporters and paparazzi. I don't know if that's what you would actually call them. I guess just reporters. But they had to change their phone number because they were getting so many phone calls from reporters, television shows, movie producers. One movie producer said, was explaining why David and Diane's story would make a great mini series. And he said, it's a modern day Romeo and Juliet, only they kill someone else instead of each other.
Or kill them. Doesn't Romeo and Juliet kill themselves because of their love?
Right. And so he's saying they kill someone else.
Right.
Yeah.
The person that got shot in the face and the high school girl that hung herself.
Who knows if that had anything to do with this?
Right. Like, I wasn't assuming it did.
Right.
Perhaps my mind went to, yeah, okay, it would have happened either which way.
Yeah, that's true. I think so, probably.
And like how, I don't know, but how often does that happen at blank high school across the country? But of course, this high school, we're going looking for evidence that there's good here, but
right. And then they found bad.
It's a confirmation bias.
That's interesting. That is
not that she was looking for bad, but
right.
kind of in a roundabout way.
And that's interesting because I'm trying to think. I went to high school with a lot of people. I had a very big high school, and in the 4 years that I was there, did anybody kill themselves or get killed? I don't.
Also, you went to a very big high school.
Very big, yeah.
I mean, I guess you would have probably heard about it.
Probably no. There would have been something. But maybe
you
not.
Want to cut this, perhaps. But you went to a very rich white high school.
I did.
And I'm not saying
I don't have
that.
That's fine. That's
yeah,
true.
Like, I'm not saying many white rich people commit suicide and it's just as tragic, but maybe not as prevalent.
Yes, that's probably true.
I don't know.
I don't know either. I would
stats.
assume that. I know that most school shooters are white.
Well, yeah, but that's a different thing.
That's true.
Anyways.
All right, we're getting off. So Diane's 2-week trial began February 1998. So she was in custody for 2 years prior to her trial. It was in Fort Worth. And Linda Jones, Adrianne's mother, this is interesting, actually asked that the death penalty be removed as a sentencing option from both Diane and David's trial. They were going to have separate trials.
Why is that interesting?
Because they killed her daughter. And she...
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was thinking. Okay, yeah.
Adrianne's mom asked that death penalty be removed.
Maybe she didn't want any other parent to go through what she was going through.
Which is amazing, I think.
It is.
I mean...
or maybe she wanted them to rot and suffer in prison.
That's what I would want. So that's true.
So either which way is
not
lovely, but like understandable.
Yeah. During the trial, Diane admitted to being at the scene of the crime, but said she had no participation in killing Adrianne. The Naval Academy midshipman and her roommates both stated that when she told them about it, when she told Jay and her roommates about it, she showed no remorse. She did not feel bad. Nothing. After more than 6 hours of deliberations over 2 days, the jury found Diane guilty of capital murder in the death of Adrianne Jones. And under Texas law, murder is the intentional killing of another human being. Capital murder includes murder with an underlying felony of kidnapping, robbery, aggravated sexual assault, arson, or obstruction. So I guess kidnapping is kind of I assume what it was.
And maybe, I'd have to look up the definition, but kidnapping could be, hey, I'm saying we're going to gather for one reason, but I have a whole different reason.
Right.
Yeah.
So she was...
And I'm taking you in my personal vehicle to an isolated place.
It was Diane's mom's car, yeah. So Diane was transferred from a jail in Fort Worth to the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. She was held in a state prison in Gatesville, Texas. And at one point, she actually had to be held in protective custody. I guess she was having a lot of trouble with the other prisoners.
Meaning perhaps she went into solitary confinement?
Yeah, they had to. Yes, she did protective custody. She had to be placed not in Gen Pop, like not in the general population.
Maybe because her story was so publicized,
perhaps,
or whatever.
Perhaps.
Yeah, I think a lot of not that she was a celebrity,
yes.
but
they get
similar
hassled.
idea.
Several years later, Diane got to know Stephen Mora, a fellow Texas inmate, through the mail. He was accused of or convicted of committing auto theft and burglary, and was in prison for threatening someone related to one of his cases.
Same prison as her?
Well, they never met in person, but he was in Texas. I don't know where.
Okay.
So they never met in person, but they corresponded and communicated via mail. Although I don't know how you meet. Like, how do you meet somebody like that? You're both in prison.
Perhaps because I think in many prisons, you can still
put on
watch the news.
Yeah, that's true.
And I don't know.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know that.
There's also things like, well, how do they get cigarettes in there, and how do they make liquor? I'm sure there's ways.
You don't want to miss what happens next in today's murder story, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after a short message from our sponsors.
So I don't know how they met, but they did. They corresponded through the mail, and they decided to get married, and they petitioned Bexar County in Texas for a marriage license in 2003. They had a wedding ceremony on June 17th, 2003.
So I wonder, he must have been at least close-ish by. And what's the benefit of getting married when you're in? What was her sentence? Do we know? You didn't say.
Life in prison.
Oh, you did say. Okay,
life
sorry.
In prison, yeah. Maybe I didn't say that, but yes, she was sentenced to life in prison. So Diane's mother and one of her male friends actually stood in for Diane and Stephen, and it was the county's first ever proxy marriage. So they were married by proxy, where Diane's mom was acting as Diane.
And the male friend was acting as Stephen.
Yeah. It was performed by a judge in San Antonio. I don't know the benefit. That's really an interesting thing to look up. But either way, they were divorced around 2008. So it lasted about 5 years.
Well, I imagine if you've never met your spouse and you can't see them.
Right. I don't understand. Is it just
a challenging marriage?
Marriage is pretty challenging by itself.
Maybe it'd be better not seeing the person. I'm just kidding.
I mean, I know that my relationship...
There's got to be a benefit, though, right? Because otherwise, why would you do it? Or maybe it's just people in prison.
To do?
Yeah, it gives you something to do and some kind of hope.
Yeah.
Like, even if you know you're never getting out, it's like it's something.
It's some semblance of a normal
normalcy,
life.
even if it's totally abnormal.
I bet that's what it is.
Yeah, it's just like I have a person out there.
So sad.
Someone out there. Well, yeah, but don't murder someone.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true. It's both. It's sad, and
I still feel sad for them because they're human beings, and that must be awful. And also
course.
They murdered somebody, so that's what you get. But
totally. Yeah, it's both. I feel sad because also someone who murders someone, I have to imagine they had shit in their life. Not that that's an excuse.
No excuses, but think about, I can only think about how many times I've done things and impulsively and instantly regretted them. Obviously,
thank God it's not
murdering somebody, but instantly regretted it and wish I hadn't done that.
Yep.
I wish I hadn't sent that text. I wish I hadn't driven that road, whatever.
Yep.
And unfortunately,
although we called it impulsive. Yes, it was emotionally charged, but not impulsive.
That is
not in the moment impulsive. Yes, in the week.
Yep.
In the week or month.
A good distinction.
Emotionally charged and perhaps emotionally quote unquote impulsive, but not spur of the moment impulsive.
You're right.
That's like if I throw a brick at your head right now because I'm mad at you, that's impulsive.
Right. No,
in the moment.
This was premeditated.
Yeah.
That's a really important distinction to make. I agree. Yeah. And that also carries generally a much heavier sentence. So Diane stuck to that she had nothing to do with this. She was just there for years. So by 2007, she had appealed so many times that she wasn't able to appeal anymore.
She exhausted them.
She exhausted them. But her lawyer allowed her to take a polygraph test that was administered by Dateline. Her news story was that David and her had been breaking up and that David was using the murder to make sure that she was always tied to him. She noted that she did obstruct justice because she helped clean the car afterwards and she was an accessory after the fact. But she said, the jury convicted me of intending to kill Adrianne, which I did not.
So she admits to being in the car, maybe being there to like razzle her up or whatever the word
and then
is.
Cleaning up afterwards.
But never intending that. Did she? Oh, wow.
Right. She's saying, I had no intention. I didn't know that was going to happen.
We were going to kind of screw with her or like mess with her.
And so she took this polygraph because she was like, I'm going to prove my innocence. And the polygraph administrator kept telling her, please stop breathing so exaggerated. You're breathing in a very exaggerated way. You can't do that. And apparently this is kind of like, this can deem a polygraph kind of like almost like a mistrial, like, can't read it. Right.
Totally. How many times have people who administer polygraphs, I'm not sure the official word, I'm sure, seen people try, especially, and this was before the internet was like a big thing, seen people try to fit, like one up a polygraph.
Sure.
Which I think, I don't know, but once you try to do that, it's like they are looking out for that.
Right. And I think that there's probably people who try to, beat it by like calming their breath, bringing it down. And then there are people who also, like Diane, it sounds like purposefully hyperventilating.
Messing it up.
And so they mess it up so it's unreadable.
Right.
The administrator did say that he did believe he had enough to say that she had failed the crucial question, which was whether or not she had intended to kill Adrianne.
Yep.
So he still said she failed, even with her trying to mess it up.
And that's something, I don't know if this is true for all polygraphs, but I believe, but perhaps in general, polygraphs like on NYPD Blue or whatever, they'll just ask like 50 questions.
Right.
What I've seen is that polygraph administrators, before the polygraph is even, the stuff's put on to measure the heart rate, they will say, okay, let's agree on 2 or 3 questions that we're going to go through.
Right.
Right? Like,
yeah, I think so. I don't think it's as extensive.
It's not just like, oh, okay, strap this on and let's go.
Right.
Yeah.
In one of her appeals, this was a big one. She really pushed for this, that because of the national attention her case got, the trial was televised live, and there were at least 2 books and a made-for-TV movie made about this. So she said that she had been threatened and assaulted by other inmates, and she deserved to be like released based on this because it wasn't her fault there was so much media attention.
Okay, but if that, to me, that's like reason for a solitary confinement type thing,
right?
Or not, and I believe not general population.
She was in and out of solitary or in protective custody. David's lawyer for his trial was trying to challenge. So his strategy was to challenge David's confession, saying that the Air Force Academy, he was confined at the Air Force Academy with detectives and other Air Force officers, and they questioned him for more than 30 hours before he confessed to belief. 30 hours. That is, I mean, we've seen confessions or heard been stuff thrown out for less than 30 hours.
Sure, but I'm guessing they're going to say they coerced him after 30 hours, lack of sleep, lack of food, minimal water, whatever. That's what basic human rights were kind of taken away.
And that's all that the lawyer had, because he typed up his own confession. So the lawyer, that's the only thing he could use to defend David. And ultimately on July 24th, 1998, a jury found David guilty of capital murder. He was also sentenced to life in prison.
So did the judge or jury or whomever grant the no death penalty?
They did.
Interesting.
They did. He was held at a unit near Huntsville. In 2016, he was moved to a different unit. And as of 2018, He was held in Wichita Falls and enrolled at the Southwest Baptist Theological Seminary's inmate seminary in order to become a pastor behind bars. He said that his confession to the police was correct. It was true. And he was extremely remorseful for murdering Adrianne. And he said if he could do it over again, he would have pleaded guilty to the murder.
Well, this sounds weird, but I really kind of appreciate that yes, it's awful, terrible, all the things. And also that he at least is owning it today. And I thought you were going to say that if he could go back in time, he wouldn't have murdered her. Sure, I'm certain he thinks that. But also he's saying, I would have owned it from the beginning.
Yeah, and I think that's great. He does still to this day insist that if it weren't for Diane's ultimatum, the murder would have never happened. But he still expresses guilt and said that his prison sentence, life in prison, he said this is more than appropriate. And I accept it, which, I mean, who cares?
Right.
If you accept it or
whatever.
not,
and I, of course, I want to jump on the, you're still blaming the other female, but it's not that. But like, I get it. Like I don't get it. I'm just trying to the best of my ability, put myself in his shoes or anyone's shoes at that age of like,
Can you imagine though at that age?
He was pressured. It is not her fault.
No, it's
his. It's both of theirs.
It's both of theirs because supposedly according to him, she hit Adrianne with the dumbbell and then he shot her.
But I'm guessing the plan was to harm her from the get-go.
Of course it was. I believe from everything I read, I believe that Diane absolutely gave David an ultimatum and said, you have to kill her.
Totally.
And also he could have said bye and not done it.
Right. Also, we are full-grown adults.
Right. Well, if I put myself back, and it's tough to do, but if I put myself back into like my 16-year-old mind, like I was an idiot and incredibly impulsive, and I thought that everything was the end of the world, like every emotional thing. Sometimes I still do, but
you still probably wouldn't have murdered. And we're just trying to kind of relate in the best way possible.
Right. I wouldn't have murdered somebody, but I was very I do understand the difference between I can be very unreasonable now, but I can still at some point get my emotions under control. Whereas at 16, 17, 18, I was much less capable of doing that. And I was never in love at 16, 17, 18.
He was desperate to keep his love.
He was very,
Also, now we need to shut up. It sounds like we're making excuses too.
That's true. You're right. It does kind of. I guess there is no excuse.
There is no excuse.
It's sad also, for everyone.
This is just a fact. He was younger. He wasn't fully formed in his brain. Right. He had peer pressure. Also, yeah, we've all had peer pressure and we didn't murder. So
that's right.
Neither here nor there. Thank you for owning it. Goodbye.
Right. Yes, they are both still alive and still in prison. And that's it. That's our story. You know what? I read it. I was just in my head trying to think of a better way to end it because I did read a review that said the stories just end abruptly.
Well, that's how they end.
I was like, but that's kind of how it goes. Like, what do you want me to do? Keep talking about what? Should we like do a little story breakdown now?
Well, maybe they'll like that little banter we went on where we started sounding like we justified it for him.
We are not, to be clear, defending the murderers in any way. No. It is absolutely awful. But it is sad to me to think about people who do things in their teenage years that they pay for the rest of their lives because
we are not currently our teenage selves.
Right.
Also, I don't know. I'm going to go too far. We're gonna sounding
sympathetic to yeah. So we'll leave it at that. And I'm assuming the person who said that the episodes end too abruptly is not listening. But if they are, sorry, that's how it ends.
It's they're in prison.
Yeah, they're in prison.
As they should be. And
that's it. Our thoughts will be with Adrianne's family and
all the families, I'd say, because the families
all lost kids.
All lost
children. Yeah.
Kids.
Yeah.
Parts of their family. In different ways.
That's true.
I don't mean to laugh, but you know what I mean.
Yes.
Like some can still visit, perhaps.
All right. Well, we will say goodbye, I think, at this point. And if you're listening to this the day after Christmas, then Hopefully you had a lovely holiday if you celebrate.
Well, you're not sure you're putting it out, so this is coming out after Christmas, period.
Yes, it is. Whether it be the day after or the week after.
Or the day after the first day of the new 2024.
That's right. So either way.
Happy New Year and happy holiday.
Thank you very much. And go leave us a review. It really does help our podcast when you leave reviews and rate and review us, even the bad ones. And find our Patreon, follow us on socials. Happy New Year. Happy holidays. Goodbye.
Oh, good night and good luck. Oh, yeah. Geez. Good night and good luck, you guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye. Death by Southwest is hosted by Jenna Schneider and Margot Carmichael.
Executive produced by Margot Carmichael.
Produced by Jenna Schneider.
Audio editing and sound design by Margot Carmichael.
Music by Soundstripe.
And a special thanks to Edward R. Murrow for letting us borrow his famous sign-off phrase, good night and good luck.